Welcome back to another 4547 Blog Presents, the new conservative radio show. I'm your host, Ninj, and after a long break, we are back. And we're going to just get right into it today. We're talking about the new mayor of New York who was inaugurated on January 1st, this Zohran Mamdani. We're going to be breaking down his speech and, giving our opinion on that. So let's go ahead and get right into it.
It could belong to those who operate our subways and rake our parks. Those who feed us biryani and beef patties, picanha and pastrami on rye. And they know that this belief could be made true if only government dared to work hardest for those who work hardest.
If New York doesn't belong to the people who operate the subways or rake the parks or serve you food, then who does New York belong to and why? Ultimately, whose fault is it if New York doesn't belong to the people who live in New York? If New York doesn't belong to the New Yorkers, who gave up that power? Who's to be held accountable?
Over the years to come, my administration will resurrect that legacy. City Hall will deliver an agenda of safety, affordability, and abundance, where government looks and lives like the people it represents, never flinches in the fight against corporate greed, and refuses to cower before challenges that others have deemed too complicated.
My first takeaway from this guy is an actual silver-tongued devil. His confidence doesn't equal any kind of accuracy. He's got a strong delivery, but it's just masking the weak evidence that he has for what he's saying. He's got conclusions that are offered without showing any of the work. He's making promises without discussing any of the limits or the costs of how you will bring those policies into fruition. The complexity is flattened by simple binaries. He's saying, these people failed and I'm going to do better. And then he's making urgency, and it's used to discourage any kind of scrutiny of his policies at all. He's asserting, or his assertions are replacing his verification. And the accountability that he's saying that needs to be taking place, it's unclear if it's even going to happen. He's saying that they're failing, but is there going to be any accountability for that failure, or is he just the miraculous savior that's going to be walking in and just fixing everything? His oversimplification ignores real-world friction, and the friction that implementing those policies or even trying to get those policies into place is going to cause. But let's go ahead and hear this next part.
And I stand just as resolutely alongside those who did not. I know there are some who view this administration with distrust or disdain, or who see politics as permanently broken. And while only action can change minds, I promise you this: if you are a New Yorker, I am your mayor. Regardless of whether we agree, I will protect you, celebrate with you, mourn alongside you, and never, not for a second, hide from you.
You know, he's not lying, and that's the sad part about all this, is that if you are a New Yorker, he is your mayor. You know, a strong delivery doesn't equal a sound plan. And, if the details can't be questioned, the idea, it's not finished. He hasn't been questioned or even answered the questions that are already out there of how he's going to make housing more affordable in New York. And these people are in the crowd, and they're just eating up everything he's saying. Oh, you're like me. How is he like you? How is he going to get to the position that he is advocating for without causing you, the people in the crowd that are cheering and going, hell yeah, any pain? It's not going to happen. It's not possible at all whatsoever. And if he's going to tax the rich, as the Democrats have been saying for a very long time, what incentive do the rich people or the wealthy people in New York have to even stay in New York? They're going to go. And if it gets too bad, what happens if Wall Street leaves New York? Where does that leave New York? Has anybody ever thought about that? What if Wall Street leaves the New York City?
I want to ask all of you, if you are able, whether you are here today or anywhere watching, to stand with me. I ask you to stand with us now and every day that follows. City Hall will not be able to deliver on our own. And while we will encourage New Yorkers to demand more from those with the great privilege of serving them, we will encourage you to demand more of yourselves as well. The movement we began over a year ago did not end with our election. It will not end this afternoon.
No, the movement they started is just getting started, and we're all going to see how that goes. If you guys stand together with Zoran Mamdani, I hope you guys know what you're doing, and what you're asking for, and what communism and what the ideas that this guy has actually bring to a city as big as yours, one of the biggest, most thriving cities on the planet. What it's going to become, we're all going to see. And for your guys' sake, I hope to God that it is nothing that we think it's going to be. He says that City Hall will not be able to deliver on its own, and I think what's more appropriate is City Hall will not be able to deliver. Period. How is City Hall going to be able to lower people's rents? This dude is selling pipe dreams to people who have pipe mines. They are high. And the stuff that they're smoking must be pretty good stuff for them to be able to be buying this shit that he's selling. But let's check out this next part.
Today begins a new era. I stand before you, moved by the privilege of taking this sacred oath, humbled by the faith that you have placed in me, and honored to serve as either your 111th or 112th mayor of New York City. But I do not stand alone. I stand alongside you, the tens of thousands of you gathered here in Lower Manhattan, warmed against the January chill by the resurgent flame of hope. I stand alongside countless more New Yorkers watching from cramped kitchens in Flushing and barbershops in East New York, from cell phones propped against the dashboards of parked taxicabs at LaGuardia, from hospitals in Mott Haven and libraries in El Barrio that have too long known only neglect.
So if you're like me and you're not from New York, you have no idea what the 111th and 112th mayor joke was about. And this goes back to a guy named Matthias Nichols. He was the mayor that all this confusion has started under. So in reality, he never really held the former title as mayor of New York. He served as a colonial administrator under the British rule. And after the English seized New Amsterdam in 1664, Nichols was appointed as Secretary of the Colony of New York, and then he also acted as a judge and a legal organizer, or like a de facto administrator. He accepted or exercised like mayoral-like authority without the actual office. So he oversaw the courts. He had like local governments of legal codes, and it made him appear as like the retroactive mayor, but the office did not yet function as what would be considered the mayor until later. New York's mayoralty wasn't formally established until 1665, a year later, when the first official mayor under the English charter was Thomas Willett. So that's just a little bit of history on the 111th and 112th, mayor joke that he made.
Together, we will tell a new story of our city. This will not be a tale of one city governed only by the 1%. Nor will it be a tale of two cities, the rich versus the poor. It will be a tale of 8.5 million cities, each of them a New Yorker with hopes and fears, each a universe, each of them woven together. The authors of this story will speak Pashto and Mandarin, Yiddish and Creole. They will pray in mosques, at shul, at church, at gurudwaras and mandirs and temples.
I don't even live in New York, and I think it's time that we stop pretending that New York is one city. It's more or less 8.5 million different egos, each demanding their own rules. Law is optional, standards are offensive, and every failure gets wrapped in the language of a lived experience that's not compassion, that's surrender. When everyone gets their own version of the city, criminals get excuses, activists get veto power, and working people, they get trapped in this bullshit. Disorder gets rebranded as culture, and enforcement gets smeared as cruelty. It's bullshit. That's why they're out there, protesting the police. Oh, they're so cruel because they're enforcing the laws that the government voted in, that the people back. This is what weak leadership looks like. They're afraid to enforce the rules, and they're afraid to offend. They're afraid to admit a city without standards is just a crowded argument. Everybody just making noise. A city isn't a group of therapy sessions. It's a contract. And until New York remembers that, it won't be 8.5 million cities. It'll be one big failure.
To those who insist that the era of big government is over, hear me when I say this. No longer will City Hall hesitate to use its power to improve New Yorkers' lives. For too long, we have turned to the private sector for greatness while accepting mediocrity from those who serve the public. I cannot blame anyone who has come to question the role of government, whose faith in democracy has been eroded by decades of apathy.
City Hall says it will no longer hesitate to improve lives. We've heard that line before, and we know exactly what that means. It means cashless bail, where repeat offenders get back on the street before the paperwork dries. It means sanctuary policies, where federal law is ignored and neighbors absorb the cost, neighborhoods absorb the cost. It means right to shelter without limits, dumping people into hotels where taxpayers flip the bill time and time again. It means defund the police politics, followed by crime spikes that they pretend not to see. And it means congestion pricing and new fees, because when their plans fail, they just charge you more. They call this improving lives. What it really is governing by press release, compassion without standards, and spending without accountability. And also, authority without consent. Nobody's saying, go ahead and charge me more. They're just saying, we're going to do it. Cities don't fall apart because leaders hesitate. They fall apart because leaders never admit they're wrong. New York doesn't need faster government. It needs one that remembers the law applies to everyone, including City Hall. Mamdani is going to find out that he's playing with fire. And when you play with fire, you get burned.
One where government is no longer solely the final recourse for those struggling. One where excellence is no longer the exception. We expect greatness from the cooks wielding 1,000 spices, from those who stride out onto our Broadway stages, and from our starting point guard at Madison Square Garden. Let us demand the same from those who work in government. In a city where the mere names of our streets are associated with the innovation of the industries that call them home, we will make the word City Hall synonymous with both resolve and results.
They're calling this demanding excellence from Broadway to City Hall, and honestly, the audacity is breathtaking. Broadway demands excellence because if you fail, you're fired. The show shuts down and someone else takes your place. City Hall fails nonstop and calls it progress. That's not excellence. That's failure with an oversized taxpayer marketing budget. This speech isn't leadership. It's propaganda. It's a silver-tongued devil patting himself on the back while the city is about to rot beneath him. The crime's up, businesses are gone, the middle-class families are fleeing, and somehow the people responsible are still giving "listen to me," the expert speeches about standards. Let's be clear. They don't demand excellence from criminals. They don't demand excellence from bureaucrats. They don't even demand excellence from themselves. They demand it from you, the taxpayer. They demand you to pay more, to accept less, and to shut up about it. They talk about performance like it's theater, because theater doesn't require accountability. You can rewrite, the script changing the lighting and pretending the audacity or pretending that the audience doesn't even see the audacity in the problems that are being presented. But cities don't work like that. When policies fail, people get hurt, and no amount of buzzwords is going to fix that. This isn't excellence. It's elite cosplaying. A ruling class pretending, competence while hiding behind slogans, consultants, and carefully edited videos. If City Hall actually demanded excellence, half of the agencies would be dismantled. Half the leadership would be fired, and half these speeches would never even be written. So no, this isn't a renaissance, it's a cover-up, and New Yorkers are expected to applaud while paying for the mess. The show isn't Broadway, it's City Hall, and it's been a disaster for years. Wake up, everybody.
Getting on a bus without worrying about a fare hike or whether you'll be able to get to your destination on time will no longer be deemed a small miracle because we will make those buses fast and free. These policies are not simply about the costs we make free, but the lives we fill with freedom. For too long in our city, freedom has belonged only to those who can afford to buy it. Our City Hall will change that.
Mamdani has a vision for New York City's transit, but it's not a vision at all. It's a lie with a soundtrack. Nothing is free, guys. Nothing is free. It's paid for by the taxpayers, debt, or the riders who still follow the rules while everyone else rides for nothing. And he's talking about fast? You can't have fast transit when it doubles as a homeless shelter, and the platforms double as crime scenes that are constantly getting shut down. This video doesn't talk about the fare evasion, it doesn't talk about enforcement, it doesn't talk about safety, because admitting those problems would mean admitting the failure of the Metropolitan Transit Authority. Free transit doesn't create fairness. It rewards abuse. It punishes the working public. It turns a public service into a rolling excuse machine. New York doesn't need slogans. It needs rules. It needs enforcement and adults in charge, not some kid that thinks he knows what's going on because he's playing mayor. Because a transit system that's free but broken isn't progressive. It's just another bill that taxpayers are forced to pay. Why do taxpayers consistently need to pick up the slack of the people who are doing nothing in society? This is completely unfair, and the taxpayers are sick of it.
Their hopes and dreams and interests will be reflected transparently in government. They will shape our future. And if for too long these communities have existed as distinct from one another, we will draw this city closer together. When we won the primary last June, there were many who said these aspirations and those who held them had come out of nowhere. Yet one man's nowhere is another man's somewhere. This movement came out of 8.5 million somewheres. Taxi cab depots and Amazon warehouses, DSA meetings and curbside domino games.
From Amazon warehouses to City Hall, the movement, he says. Let's translate that, guys. This isn't about fixing working conditions. It's about turning grievance into government power. The pitch is simple. It's if you're angry enough, then you're qualified to run a city. Working hard doesn't make you a leader. It makes you a worker. Governing requires discipline, judgment, and restraint, not permanent outrage at companies like Amazon. This video and this speech, it blurs activism like leadership on purpose. Protesters demand, leaders balance. When activists take office, they keep governing like they're still marching, always angry, always blaming, always needing a villain to point the finger at and blame for the problems. Corporations are painted as evil. City Hall is painted as the prize. And taxpayers, they're the silent funding source for the entire experiment while you get sold a bill of bullshit. Notice that they're never mentioning crime or budgets or enforcement or what happens when businesses leave their city because of their fucking retarded policies. Because movements that are built on resentment don't want responsibility, they want control, but they call us the fascists. This isn't empowerment. It's activism trying to become the permanent authority. Open your eyes. Watch what's going on. History is clear. When ideology it replaces competence, the people who pay the price are the ones who just wanted a city that fucking works.
Thank you to my parents, Mama and Baba, for raising me, for teaching me how to be in this world, and for having brought me to this city. Thank you to my family from Kampala to Delhi. And thank you to my wife, Rama. For being my best friend and for always showing me the beauty in everyday things. And most of all, thank you to the people of New York.
New York. They're selling you from Kampala to Delphi. The personal journey to City Hall? Come on, spare me. Moving from Kampala to Delphi might make a touching origin story, but it doesn't qualify anybody to run a city. Biography is not a credential. Hardship is not a resume, and feelings don't balance budgets. This speech is a masterclass in distraction. It wants you emotional so you don't ask adult questions, like who's enforcing the law, or who's paying the bills, why is crime up, and why taxes keep climbing while services get worse. City Hall isn't a therapy session again, or a branding exercise. It's a job with rules, limits, and consequences. And every time leaders hide behind a personal journey, it's because they don't want to talk about performance or what really matters. Notice what's missing. There's no plan, no metrics, no trade-offs, no accountability. Just identity as armor and sentiment as policy. It's not leadership. It's immunity from criticisms. It's getting your emotions involved so you can't think clearly. New York doesn't need another memoir masquerading as governance. It needs competence. It needs restraints. And people who understand that public office is a burden, it isn't a fucking trophy. You don't hold your public office over your head like a trophy and a shiny thing for all to see. He needs to keep the inspirational music, keep the montage, keep the applause. New York, because when the story ends, the bills come due. Taxpayers are left cleaning up after leaders who thought the backstory was a backbone, when a real backbone is having experience.
To the two titans who, as an assembly member, I've had the privilege of being represented by in Congress, Nidia Velázquez and our incredible opening speaker, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You have paved the way for this moment. Thank you to the man whose leadership I seek most to emulate, who I am so grateful to be sworn in by today, Senator Bernie Sanders. Thank you to my teams, from the assembly to the campaign to the transition, and now the team I am so excited to lead from City Hall.
When Mamdani says honoring the icons, that should scare you, and it should tell you everything you need to know because of the word icon. When politicians like Bernie Sanders and AOC are labeled as icons, it means the conversation is officially over. And it's not because they succeeded, but because they're no longer supposed to be questioned. Icons don't get held accountable, guys. Icons don't answer for inflation, crime, border chaos, or runaway debt. Icons get protected. Criticizing them becomes a moral offensive instead of a policy debate. This speech isn't about results, it's about reverence. It replaces outcomes with symbolism and hard questions with applause. The moment matters more than the country. The narrative matters more than actual reality. And loyalty matters more than whether anything actually works. Notice what's missing again. There's no discussion of consequences, no mention of who pays or the acknowledgement of past failures. Just emotion, praise, and demand that you feel inspired instead of informed. That's not leadership. That's politics turning into a belief system. In America, elected officials are supposed to be servants, not saints. When politicians become icons, citizens become followers, and taxpayers get stuck paying for ideas that never get tested, because testing them would be disrespectful. So no, this isn't a moment to honor icons. It's a moment to remember something dangerous. When accountability dies, ideology takes over, and the bill always comes due. And never forget who pays the bill. The taxpayer.
I stand alongside countless more New Yorkers watching from cramped kitchens in Flushing and barbershops in East New York, from cell phones propped against the dashboards of parked taxicabs at LaGuardia, from hospitals in Mott Haven and libraries in El Barrio that have too long known only neglect. I stand alongside construction workers in steel-toed boots and halal cart vendors whose knees ache from working all day. I stand alongside neighbors who carry a plate of food to the elderly couple down the hall, those in a rush who still lift strangers' strollers up subway stairs, and every person who makes the choice day after day, even when it feels impossible, to call our city home.
What, hit me here or stuck with me here is the phrase honoring the working class, because it tells you exactly how Mamdani sees working people. There's something to be honored, but not helped. Because honor is cheap. It costs nothing. Honor is what you give when you're not willing to change a policy. If leaders actually respected the working class, they wouldn't make life harder for them. They wouldn't tolerate disorder on the commute. They wouldn't, raise fees that punish overtime. They wouldn't let small businesses collapse while they're calling it transition. But none of that's mentioned. Instead, workers are praised for their resilience, which is another way of saying, we know it's hard, but we're not going to fix anything. This isn't about empowerment. It's about expectation. The expectation that working people will keep showing up, keep paying, keep enduring, while being thanked, instead of protected. There's a reason speeches replace solutions, because solutions require admitting failure again. So when City Hall says it stands with the working class, or Mamdani says he stands with the working class and understands what that really means, what they're saying is that they expect workers to stand still while government keeps moving in the wrong direction. They expect workers to close their eyes while government makes all of the foresight into the future. And this isn't how America works.
In writing this address, I have been told that this is the occasion to reset expectations, that I should use this opportunity to encourage the people of New York to ask for little and expect even less. I will do no such thing. The only expectation I seek to reset is that of small expectations. Beginning today, we will govern expansively and audaciously. We may not always succeed, but never will we be accused of lacking the courage to try.
To me, this doesn't sound like leadership, and it doesn't sound like anything but a shutdown. It sounds like a politician that's telling you the discussion is over before it even starts, without an explanation, without justification, just authority, just because he said so. A real leader explains decisions, guys. A weak one will come out and just announce them. This isn't about a vision for the city, it's a warning. It tells you the administration doesn't want debate. It doesn't want feedback or accountability. It wants acceptance. Language that replaces facts, tone replaces results, confidence replaces competence. Again, you don't hear about the cost. There's no backup plan if it fails, He just has certainty. And these are things that kind politicians use when they don't want any questions. And the truth is, they don't want any kind of questions to be said out loud. Cities don't collapse because leaders hesitate. They collapse because leaders, they stop listening. When government starts saying, I will do no such thing, what it really means is you don't get to say anything anymore. That's not bold leadership. That's arrogance with a press team, guys. And every city that's tried governing this way, they end up the same, with fewer answers, bigger messes, and taxpayers left holding the bag.
I was elected as a democratic socialist, and I will govern as a democratic socialist. I will not abandon my principles for fear of being deemed radical. As the great senator from Vermont once said, what's radical is a system which gives so much to so few and denies so many people the basic necessities of life. We will strive each day to ensure that no New Yorker is priced out of any one of those basic necessities.
The scariest part of this entire thing is the applause. The applause when Mamdani goes, I will govern as a democratic socialist, and they all applaud. They should be bracing for the consequences. The scary part is that he's looking them all in the eyes and telling them, I will govern you as a democratic socialist. And then they cheer. That sentence means government first, citizens second. Bureaucrats deciding, taxpayers complying. Markets replaced by mandates. Choice replaced by permission to do everything. They dress it up with the word democratic like it's some kind of seatbelt, but voting someone into power doesn't make unlimited power safe. It just makes it legal on day one. It isn't about, helping people. It's about expanding control. Democratic socialism doesn't have an endpoint. There's no moment when the government says, okay, we're done. You guys can take it from here. It only grows and costs more and more, and it only punishes the people who try to operate outside of it. They define the limits, the trade-offs, the failures, the definition of the failure, or even if there's an exit strategy at all, because once government becomes the provider of everything, disagreement becomes disobedience. This isn't compassion. It's dependency with a smile. And history is very clear on one thing. A government powerful enough to run your life is powerful enough to ruin it. And you don't vote your way back out of the system once it's built. Once you give them your power, you have to fight for it back. So when they say, I'm a democratic socialist, understand the translation. More control, less freedom, and a bill that never stops coming, that you constantly have to pay.
We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. If our campaign demonstrated that the people of New York yearn for solidarity, then let this government foster it. Because no matter what you eat, how you pray, or where you come from, the words that most define us are the two we all share: New Yorkers. And it will be New Yorkers who reform a long broken property tax system.
Moving from individualism to collectivism in New York City, that phrase should stop you cold in your tracks. It should scare everyone, because individualism isn't a lifestyle choice, it's a moral framework. It says the individual is the smallest unit of meaning, guys. That responsibility begins with the person, not the state. Rights exist before government, not because of it. Collectivism, it flips that entirely. With collectivism, the individual is no longer the starting point. The group is. And once the group becomes primary, the individual becomes conditional. Your value depends on your usefulness to the regime. Your freedom depends on your compliance to the regime. Your rights, they depend on your alignment to the regime. They call this compassion, but philosophically it's something else. Collectivism doesn't eliminate hierarchy, it just hides it. Some person always decides what the collective needs. Someone always decides who gives more, who keeps less, who waits longer, who sacrifices. And it's never the people, in the abstract. It's the administrators, the committees, the agencies, the political managers, your politicians. Individuals or individualism, it assumes imperfection and it builds guardrails around power, but collectivism assumes moral clarity and hands the power over. It hands over the keys to the city, and that's the danger. Once outcomes matter more than agency, coercion becomes justified. Once equality of result replaces equity of opportunity, force becomes a feature, not a bug. And once dissent threatens the collective, disagreement turns into betrayal. Historically, collectivism failed in the same way every single time, not because people are cruel, but because systems that deny human nature have to police it. Ambition gets suppressed. Excellence gets flattened. Responsibility gets diluted. And failure gets socialized until no one owns it and everyone pays for it. Everyone fails together or everyone succeeds together. This is collectivism. New York was not built by people waiting to be assigned a role. It was built by the people taking risks, making unequal outcomes and accepting unequal results. Not everybody was cut out to be on the 54th floor, of a steel building putting in the framework. Collectivism offers something seductive, relief from responsibility. If everyone is responsibility, no one truly is. If success is shared, effort becomes optional. If failure is collective, accountability disappears. When these kind of things are put in place, then failure is guaranteed because nobody wants to try. There's no incentive to try. And, the quiet truth is that the quiet truth that they never say out loud is collectivism doesn't trust people enough to be free, so it asks them to be managed instead. When you hear moving away from individualism, understand the full psychological or philosophical cost. This isn't about better services or stronger community like it's sold to be. It's about redefining the relationship between the citizen and the state. Under individualism, government exists to protect your freedom. Under collectivism, you exist to serve the system, guys. And once a society crosses that line, it doesn't argue its way back. It complies its way forward, or it fights its way to freedom. We already did that once. We don't want to do that again.
The cost of childcare will no longer discourage young adults from starting a family, because we will deliver universal childcare for the many by taxing the wealthiest few. Those in rent-stabilized homes will no longer dread the latest rent hike, because we will freeze the rent. Getting on a bus without worrying about a fare hike or whether you'll be able to get to your destination on time will no longer be deemed a small miracle, because we will make those buses fast and free.
So, universal childcare paid for by the wealthiest, that line, it collapses the moment you look at the facts. Universal childcare is not new. We've seen it in Europe, in Canada, and even in the US with some pilot programs, and the results are always the same. It's consistent. Costs explode, quality flattens, and the middle class always ends up paying more. The reality is, in places that adopt universal childcare, spending doesn't stay on the rich, it shifts. Payroll taxes go up, consumption taxes go up, fees creep in, and families lose options as, private providers get crowded out by government systems. They never tell you that universal programs don't stay universal in funding, only in obligation. Quality is the thing that suffers. Study after study shows that government-run child care standardizes care downward. Ratio rises, flexibility disappears, parents get assigned slots instead of choices. Providers answer to regulators and not the families. And if you want to talk to math, childcare is labor intensive. You can't scale it cheaply. When government guarantees demand, prices don't fall, they rise. When you get subsidies, all you're going to do is raise your prices. And that's happened with healthcare right now. That's why every universal child care program has required repeated tax increases within a few years of the launch. It isn't about helping parents. If it were, they'd expand tax credits. They would deregulate providers, and they would let families choose what works for them. Instead, Mamdani's plan does something else. It moves child care decisions from parents to bureaucracies permanently. Once it's universal, you can't opt out, politically, even if it fails. And that's the part they won't say out loud. Universal child care isn't a service, it's a system. The systems don't shrink, they grow. They cost more, and they don't ask for permission. So when they promise free child care paid for by the wealthy, understand what that means. More government control. It means fewer choices for the parents, and a bill that never stays the same where they said it would. That's not compassion. It's a transfer of responsibility and eventually a transfer of money from your wallet to theirs. That's all I got for you guys today. So, let's run it back and let's be clear about what we covered. This isn't compassion, it's control. This isn't help, it's dependency. It's not progress, it's socialism. Repackaged with better lighting and softer language. The word democratic, it's just a mental seatbelt for the liberals who don't want to really understand what socialism is in real life. Every time they promise something universal, what they really are promising is permanent government power. Fewer choices for families in a bill that fucking never ends. Socialism always sells itself as temporary, guys. It's targeted, and it's always paid for by someone else, but it always ends the same way. More bureaucracy, less freedom, and the working people trapped inside systems that they don't control. This show exists to call that out, clearly, unapologetically, and without permission. So here's the call to action. If you're tired of being, talked down to, if you're tired of paying more while getting less, if you still believe families, workers, and communities should run their own lives, not government planners, then don't just listen. Share this episode, subscribe, support independent voices, push back with real conversations, and stop letting dangerous ideas hide behind nice words. We'll keep exposing it. We'll keep saying the part they won't. You guys stay sharp and stay free, and visit 4547blog.com. Get you some conservative apparel, or get the new 4547 blog volume 2 that released on January 1st. We put a lot of work into that and think you guys would enjoy it. Thank you for spending your time with me, and we'll see you next time.